ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another fabulous episode of Stories Around Azeroth. As always, I am Pete Titanscreed Nethercoat, joined by the time-travelling gnome himself, beloved this side of Ironforge. It's Mr. Frazley-tastic. How are you this week, my dear friend?
I'm doing great, and apparently I'm the Easter King as well.
I mean, yes. The Eastern
So,
Kingdom.
yeah, Raj was saying that on the overlay, or at least on the opening, it says Easter King on my side.
Ah, well, there we go then. You are the Easter King.
Yes.
Yes. How have you been doing this week? I see you've been dabbling a little bit into classic WoW.
Yes, I have really been enjoying it, because I think what I've been enjoying is the journey. I've been enjoying just experiencing things that's making me appreciate what classic had, and appreciate even current WoW just as much. Like, there are parts I'm like, I appreciate what goes on with different things. So like it helps me understand classic and current WoW.
Okay, that's fair enough. You're playing a gnome mage still, yeah?
When I get out on the queues, so I'm a gnome mage when I get there, and then when I can't, I'm an undead rogue.
Ah, so you're playing the best of both worlds, I see.
Yes.
Brilliant stuff. Have you been doing anything else this week, my friend?
Outside of WoW, I've been playing a ton of Borderlands 3.
Yes, you have, haven't you? That's just come out.
Yeah, I basically, from Friday and Saturday, spent both days just playing Borderlands. And today I almost went back into Borderlands, like, you know what? I need to go back into WoW for a little bit. So I was in current WoW beforehand. I ran Old War with Capo, and I've been doing some more Warcraft. And then after this, I'm going to do Classic. So my mage, if I can get in the queue. If not, Undead Rogue.
Fair enough. I'm going to presume that you didn't get Mimiron's head, since I didn't see a massive explosion on Twitter that after you went into Old War.
No, I got a cape, but not a.
You've got to dedicate yourself to the mount farm, Frazley. You got to find that route, and then you got to dedicate yourself to it, week in, week out.
I'm getting better at ICC. I'm trying to run ICC every week nowadays.
Good, so that's good. But yes, I mean, otherwise, it's been a standard week for me. I'm 50% of the way through level 68 on the Heart of Azeroth, so 2 more resets, and I think we'll be at level 70. So I don't think I'll have it for next week, but the week after, we'll have a fun little story to talk about there.
Nice.
Yeah, but I think 2 resets time is going to be a lot of everything for me. 2 weeks, 2 resets time, I'll have the Nazjatar meta done as well. So that'll be that out the way. Another mount. And otherwise, it's just been a standard week. We're pretty much slowing down on the weekly raids now. I think everybody's pretty much done with it in terms of the guild team.
Yeah.
It's pretty early. Like, we look back at it, we've been in there 10 weeks. We've cleared it all already, and we're just slowing down on it now. And just, like, back calling it a day for the patch, which is weird. In 2 weeks' time, I'll have even more time, because I'll literally just be logging on doing my mount farm, and who knows? I might actually get to level my my Tauren warrior over in WoW Classic.
Nice.
That'd be something.
And because am I right? 70 is the last one that you need.
70 is the cap on the Heart of Azeroth right now, and I don't think it's going to increase until 8.3.
Okay.
Which is not going to be till January at this point, I believe, at the earliest. Because 8.2.5 will hit probably the beginning of October, ready for all of the anniversary stuff in November. So, I don't know. I'm not sure if this patch has lasted too long. I'm not sure. But that's one of the things. I'll tell you where my luck did strike me this week, though.
Where?
I got the mount from the Arachnoid Harvester.
Nice.
So, in terms of Mechagon, I'm literally just farming Steel Singer Freezer for the 1 music disc. And then I'm pretty much done on Mechagon as well. And,
nice.
I also got the new Midnight Horse from the Legion version of Lower Karazhan. So that's that new undead armored model.
Okay, yes.
The red one.
That's the one I tried going in, but it was after Legion, and that's when the drop rate went down much.
No, the dungeons hadn't changed. It's only the raids that change. So the dungeons go in there with like a 1 in 100 chance always. But the raids are a guaranteed and mythic difficulty. But then when the new expansion launches, then they go down to like a 1% chance.
Okay.
But yeah, that takes me to 425 on one character.
Nice. Almost up to the 500. Is it 450 or 500 saddles?
So 400 is the current top one for the mount collections, the top achievement. I'm trying to get to 450 before the achievement comes in, because I've always had that next, like, it's a personal thing for me. Like, I've always had that next step ahead.
Yeah.
Before it's come out, but the 400 I didn't, because like the expansion come out, you were trying to get as much done of that, and there was less time to really go mount farming. I tell you, the biggest thing that I'd like to get out of the way is I really want the experiment to drop from Dragon Soul. I'm so sick and tired of going back to Dragon Soul week in, week out. It's insane. But yeah,
so it's
no, go ahead.
Soul draining.
Yes, it's very soul draining. Dragon soul draining, one would say. Otherwise, as I said, it's been a very substandard week for me. Just normal week in, week out stuff. I think once I get into WoW Classic in a couple of weeks, it'll be something. I might find time to go do the pet battles this week, actually, because we had Super Squirt week over in the EU last week, so I leveled up a load of stuff that I needed. It's one of those things. But yes, there has been some news in the Warcraft front compared to last week, where there was not a lot. A lot of it is still very much Classic orientated still. Classic still is on that high train right now. There's been quite a fair bit of stuff where it's just clearing up clarification for the most part. So a lot of people are wondering where the Argent Door and Timbermore reps are. They're not available until Phase 1, so if you want to get to Winterspring or Moonglade, you've still got to walk through the Timbermore Tunnel without the rep for it. Good luck. Argent Dawn, they'll still be neutral with you until Phase 1 rolls around, and you've got to grind that rep up as well, which means a lot of people will be running Stratholme, because I believe they put a rep into the dungeon there. I'm not 100% sure on that one, though. I can't remember. Another piece is that they're class quests that take you into Sunken Temple. They're not available until Phase 4.
Interesting.
I was unaware of a lot of that, but then I didn't really get into the class quest stuff until way down the line. And I think those class quests are only for about level 40 to 50 as well, so...
Which makes sense. They want to get things done. They want to get things ready to go. And instead of keep making us wait for a long time for all this stuff, they figured launch with what's the most stuff and then really polish it.
Yeah.
Because I've seen an article from Kotaku about how actually a lot of private servers are closing down because of Classic, and they're actually impressed that Blizzard fixed things that even private servers could never fix.
Chat, for the benefit of those who are listening to the audio podcast down the line, Twitch chat is talking about the mounts that they've been running as well, and we got Ali as well from Dungeon Fable. She's popped in and said she would have thought that Class Quest would maybe be Phase 2 or Phase 3. I think that's due to more Phase 4 and the raid release is when the class stuff would have come out at that point. I'll be honest, a lot of my memory is now not going back to WoW Wiki or Wowpedia and checking that, and I'm literally watching the Bellular patch videos. So, which are really interesting to watch. But we'll see how they come. I think by the time I get to 60, Phase 4 will probably be out by then, but we'll see. At the moment, just based on what we talked about last week, I'm probably just going to aim to get to 60. Hopefully before BlizzCon rolls around. And, you know, if they do decide to give out the benefits and the gifts to those people in retail, I'll take some free WoW credit, I'll tell you.
Me too.
Yeah, it would be nice. I think the only other bit of Classic news that was interesting this week is that the Classic community have gone out and they've built a rough population report between Alliance and Horde. But it's the community side that have done this, and it's not due to Wowhead or the devs that have put this information out. So there's an add-on called the Census Classic Plus, runs in the background while you're playing. It basically executes a /who and works out the current players online. And then after you log out, the information you have to submit it manually. but because you've got to upload your .lua file. But it's interesting to see what it comes out like. A brief overview when this post went up on Wowhead was in terms of the normal population servers on the US, there's 63% Alliance, 37% Horde. PvP, it's the other way. It's more 57% Horde, 43% Alliance. And then when it comes to RP and RP PvP, it's more skewed Alliance side. And so, but overall, it works to about a rough 50-50 split over the course of all the factions. If you look at the bar graph, there are definitely some servers heavily weighted towards one and the other. When it comes to the EU side, it's pretty much the same kind of split. It's when it comes to the language side of things that it really splits down. English, German and French are very much a very close 48-52 kind of split. But the when it comes to the Russian, there's like a 67% Alliance with 33% like Horde. It's really different when it comes to the Russian side, and it's interesting to see that sort of information. But there's got a lot of class distribution, race distribution type things as well, as expected after the beta was open. Well, not open, but the closed beta was available. There's been a lot of warriors, a lot of mages. Even priest has a lot, but that's because people were told about the priest being best healer, you know. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't really surprise me that there's a lot of distribution towards that kind of point. What do you think about the population? Do you think it's more interesting more than anything else?
Yeah, and I think it's good to see that at least right now we're about 2 weeks out. The population's still there, because that was my biggest concern with Classic.
I think it was everybody's biggest concern.
That people want it, but people aren't going to pay for it. And then hearing about the census, seeing the article by Kotaku about how like people, the only ones that aren't going to that aren't going to Classic are the ones who don't want to pay, or the computers can't run Classic upgraded to current specs. But yeah. I'm glad to see that the looky-loos are seeming to go away, but the core community is there. And I mean, even in a way, it seems like it's taking people away from retail, at least for right now.
I mean, the realm I'm on EU is definitely about as full as it's ever been. A lot of my guild are slowly getting to the thing of playing retail and Classic now. So I'm not sure about people in your guild and anything else. But even if you just look at the numbers, and obviously these numbers aren't correct, it's just scanned, and those characters could be alts or anything else. But I mean, there's a rough total here of about 4.5 million players across Alliance and Horde on US and EU. That's a lot. That's a lot of paid subs. Will this population still be there? I mean, we're coming up to the point where Classic's been available for about a month. I mean, it's going to be about between this week and the next week that if we're going to see a population drop off, it's going to happen, because a lot of people paid early to renew their sub to be able to reserve their name.
Which, and especially because you can't pay for tokens for game time unless you're playing current.
Yeah, unless you're playing retail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just cheaper to buy like a normal sub and everything else.
Because some of the tweets I saw right after BlizzCon when they announced the sub model, because they didn't announce the model in 17, but when they announced it in 18, I saw quite a few that said, "Oh, I don't want to pay $15 for a 15-year-old game," and that was concerning. I mean, I was thinking, oh, what did Blizzard get themselves into? They're an audience that doesn't want to pay for a quality release, but it sounds like people are like, "Oh wow, this actually was good."
I mean, when it comes to a quality release, you've really got to see how that what you determine as quality. Now, day one with the length of queues, one would probably say that the quality wasn't there, but that's pretty standard of any big Blizzard release these days.
Oh, yeah, and if we're bringing people back from not being subbed, I could almost see that the telemetry was like, okay, here's what it would be, and I could see a huge bombarding the gates, like more people than they were doing tests on were doing this, because they didn't want to spin up too many servers, but then they didn't spin up enough servers to get in.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes down the line as the population tails off a little bit. We talked about this way back when. Like, keeping a lower server population means that if the population does dwindle, then the servers are closer knit together because there's less of them. Now, because they've instigated so many servers, it'll be interesting if the population is a little bit wider, a little bit thinner spread, but we'll see as that comes down. As I said, it's going to be about this week, next week, that we'll start seeing things about the population dwindle. People getting to 60, the raids are done, people are going to do it, they're not going to farm it to oblivion. It's not one of those things, I think, unless you've got like the hardcore people that want to stay up to point and be ready for Blackwing Lair and beyond. Because the biggest thing about the raids in Classic is that until you got to, say, Anchorage and Nax, like, the raids were all decent in terms of getting gear. Like, there was stuff that you wanted from Molten Core to be able to do anything else. And even when Anchorage and Nax was around, you still wanted resistance gear. So you went back and the other raids kept their part in staying relevant. So it's a little bit different to the way the retail raids go, in which case you can just skip most of it in terms of gearing. So, like, I think if a new player came in now, they do the levels, or they have BFA and take the jump to 110 and then do the 110 to 120. You'd skip dungeons completely. If you were lucky and had time walking there, you could use coins to get a level of gear already. Then you just work your way through Najjatar. You instantly get a 370 weapon, a 370 armor, which you can benthic up to 400 straight away after you do the intro quests. And, you know, then it's just getting pearls, and you can sit there and you can just find a group in the group finder, just get your pearls up just by doing rares. And then you can just get benthic gear in like a couple of days or so, and then you queue into LFR at 370, and you can just work your way up through there. And then if you really feel like you want to push your luck, you can group finder for Mythic Plus and try to get gear that way.
Yeah, that is one thing that current WoW has, is a lot of places to get gear and all places to find groups. Or at the Classic, you have to group for stuff. And even there is, I'm finding in Classic, and I knew it was going to be there, there's a sort for quests. Like, I have to find a group to do certain quests because there. Now, a fun thing with that, though, I found one of the things I missed, and I was hoping I would see this. I grouped with somebody on a Sunday. On a Tuesday, in that same zone, guess who I ran into in a party?
Same person?
Exactly. And we're like, hey, I remember you! And like, yeah, I had one person that I've not messaged them since we grouped on Wednesday.
Right.
But I had him as a friend and all that. And so there is that server community there. Whereas like what you I mean, like these LFRs, the LFG, I'm never going to see those people ever again, probably because of.
I mean, it's a valid argument what you're saying, but you have to remember that when LFG was a thing, you know, we got battle tags slightly later. So the idea with the battle tag system in the LFG was if you found somebody you wanted to play with, you add them to your battle tag. So the lack of communication that's done in groups is down to people that don't want to talk.
Well, and the battle tag's flawed, in my opinion, because of the limit of battle tag. I only let people be a battle tag friend if I know them and I have a good rapport with them. Because how are you going to know them and have a good rapport if you don't speak to them in LFG or LFR? That's true, and you're right. I spoke more in Final Fantasy 14 groups because I would get accommodations. It wasn't as much I wanted their approval, like to be friends, but there's something I wanted from them. You're right. I don't talk a lot in LFG and LFR, and I talk more in these parties because when I'm in here, I'm like, oh, this is somebody on my server. I don't want to burn myself.
Yeah.
But
here's an interesting point that you raised. I mean, if in retail they added a commendation system, do you think you'd talk more there if you did LFR or LFG?
Yes, absolutely. I would. I like people's approval. I want people to like me.
So basically what you're saying is that to incentivize communication, there has to be a reward.
I think I am kind of saying that.
It's a valid point. I mean,
or at least a consequence that if I don't communicate, I do lose something. And like in Final Fantasy 14, by not communicating, I lose the chance of getting something.
Okay. I mean, you don't lose anything. You just don't get a commendation. I mean, the way Final Fantasy XIV works is that commendations are most likely going to be given to tanks and healers, regardless of what you do. You know,
Not or the ones who or the DPS who crack jokes during the raids.
is that what you managed to do? Was it? Good job.
Quite a few times I made people laugh, and I made people so.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good point that you make, and it'd be interesting to see if they added a commendation system. It might mean that, especially in LFR, people become less toxic, specifically.
Well, and I ran an island today, and I had two party members that were complete. Do you allow cursing on this show? Or no cursing?
I mean, you've always ever beeped yourself, my friend, and never had me to do it. So if you want to curse...
These two made me so mad. We had two assholes on this group. One died, and it's never, ever, ever, ever respawned. Okay. The other was a druid that was stealth and never helping. If I had someone... And I kicked them both. I vote kicked them both. Okay. But I'm saying that's that they didn't want to help at all because... And I realized... Unless you're listening to this, and if you are an asshole, and there is that disposability part even in our grouping. I don't know how to solve that, but there is. Whereas in Classic, it's not there.
I think a commendation system would probably work, or at least help alleviate something. I mean, there's never going to be a punishment. That's the problem. Like, the furthest that you get in Final Fantasy, the furthest that you get in Warcraft is the fact that there is a punishment if you leave a group. And even then, to the point in Final Fantasy and Warcraft, people abuse it by saying, I'm not going to leave, you have to vote me out, because then they don't get the debuff. You know? So, yeah. There are ways for people to abuse it. That's the annoying thing. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see more a commendation system, but there does have to be higher penalties, I guess, for people that don't want to do anything. Like, if they get vote kicked out for reasons, then there should be a debuff for it to incentivize people to get on with things. Personally, personally, because of the class I now main in a Demon Hunter, the first thing I do whenever I queue into islands is I look at the health level of everybody. And if I see that they're below, in a heroic, if I see that they're below 200k, I'll just be like, just chill with me and I'll kill everything. But I'm pretty cordial in anytime I group up, and I always try to move over the Final Fantasy aspect. Whenever I join a random group, I'll always say hello. You know, especially in dungeons, while there's a timer and we're waiting, I always try to have a conversation. People don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. I mean, there's nothing you can change. I mean, I went through a massive point, especially in Wrath, when they introduced LFG and they stuck the Blue Drake in Oculus as a reward for doing Oculus because everybody kept leaving it. And I would just run it, and I wouldn't talk. I'd just be like, hi, and then just like focus on getting the run done, you know?
Yeah.
So there are times. I mean, everybody has those days where they don't want to talk anyway. Let's be fair here.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons I stream is it forces me to talk more. Not maybe not to the party.
Yeah.
But it forces me to be more involved with people.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But anyway, let us move on. There's been a little bit of other news I want to talk about this week. While the PTR is still there, there is more information that's sat there that is encrypted. And we've seen Blizzard get more with this encrypting stuff, with like the special mounts they've done, and specifically the cinematics. But what Wowhead has managed to determine is that there is 2 cinematics there in the 8.2.5 data. One is at least 6 minutes long. Now, the other thing they've managed to ascertain is that the biggest things that we're going to get with 8.2.5, other than the anniversary stuff, is that there's going to be the end of the war campaign, and there's a few new NPCs and a battle pet that's there that's going to be in-game to try and get as well. it's interesting to talk about what the cinematics could contain in the end of the war campaign, because if you want to follow the leaked information about what the end raid is going to be and where the direction of the story is, it's rife with speculation. We did a whole episode on this before the latest leaks came out, and I don't really want to go into the speculation again without it being its own real episode, really, because I think there's too much to talk about. But I think it's good. 2 cinematics means that I'm going to imagine that they're going to put a lot of stuff into the war campaign. This is the type of... I'm hoping it's going to be the sort of stuff that's going to keep us busy over a couple of weeks. I imagine it will probably be from the beginning of October until the end of October, because then that will lead into BlizzCon and then the 15th anniversary stuff.
Well, and Jeremy Fiesel had a tweet out that this revolution will not be data mined. So there's like Jen of Boiling Gray brought up a point that the cinematic could be the one of the ones that's released that's not in game. But I think if they went to the effort to encrypt it like this, I think it's something new. It may be in game, but it's something.
Oh, I think they're both going to deal with the war campaign.
Yeah,
that's what I specifically think. I think it's going to be a 4-week story. Is what I'm imagining. What I'm saying is that I fully expect the 8.2.5 to hit retail at the beginning of October, because that's when artifact knowledge runs out. We don't get any more increases from the beginning of October, and then that 8.2.5 story will last all the way through until the beginning of November, at which point we have BlizzCon, and then that will kickstart the 15th anniversary. So I imagine we'll have a 4-week period where they'll time gate some story out.
And how cool would it be if they time it right with BlizzCon, where people finish it up before they leave for BlizzCon. Then at BlizzCon they're like, "Oh, you know that exciting thing that happened? Well, guess what? Here's what's coming next."
Oh no, absolutely.
I mean, how cool! That would just be like it's such a cool thing for the 50th anniversary to time the story that way, and like the whole audience is like cheering, because like I remember when we saw Battle for Azeroth, we were all like wondering what's going on, and like we all had these ideas because it was a pretty good wrap up of I'm trying to remember when the timing of it was, but we knew something big was coming.
So we got the information for BFA before we went to Argus.
Wow. Okay. That isn't. Okay.
Or it was just slightly after Argus. I'd have to go and find the original information on the Sargeras cinematic to be able to tell you when that came out.
But Argus was a pretty big reveal too, and then what happened?
Argus was a massive reveal. I'm quite sure BFA was announced at the opening ceremony, and then there was a What's Next panel to say that we're going to Argus.
Yes.
Because that's what I imagine they're doing at BlizzCon this year. It's going to be, we'll see a Diablo 4 announcement, we'll see the Overwatch 2 announcement, whatever that is, whether it's expansion pack or a brand new game, and we'll have the new Warcraft expansion announcement, and then it will be a What's Next panel immediately following that, which is what will detail all of 8.3. And then the minute BlizzCon ends, 8.3 will be on the PTR.
I'm with Ali. 8.3 cinematic, and then one for the new expansion of the Rise of Numergon.
Oh, BlizzCon. That's
going to be
absolutely
at BlizzCon.
Yeah, no, I fully. No, there'll be the expansion trailer, and then there'll be a 8.3 trailer. I agree with that. I think Ali's right on the nose about that one. I think it's going to be a very good BlizzCon year, so I'm very envious of everybody that's going. The hype levels that are going to be there are going to be off the roof insane.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting at least.
And then
go ahead.
And then BlizzCon is also going to be, we're going to hear the What's Next for Classic. If they did the same Classic panel they did last year, which was really cool, it'd be cool to see what would go. It'd be really cool to see like how things are going, and then what's next for Classic.
I think they'll have a time frame for the phases. It's what I think they'll do, because I think that's the biggest information that people want. Because those people that are specifically subbing for Classic are going to want to know when they want to re-up their sub to do another month. But I mean, even by jumping, I did not miss your expansion title. I did not. I just ignored it.
And Ali did not say Rise of Normagun. I just got to put that out there for record.
No, you could have just got away with it and blamed her completely. You know, the only way they could have seen chat is if they watched the VOD. So
I don't want Ali to be mad at me. Ali's one of my best friends. I don't want Ali to be mad at me.
I think they'll definitely have the what's next for Classic, and it'll be a timeline thing. Absolutely, because Classic until Classic hits Nax, I mean they're done essentially. You know, but. You know, I mean, all of Warcraft came out, I believe, over a 12-month period. So who knows what we'll see. There's one last bit of news, which was Blizzard fully revealed their Recruit a Friend update.
Yes,
this was really cool to see. Really interesting. There has been a lot on the fence. A lot of people on the fence on both sides of this. For good and for bad. The biggest detractors obviously being it looks like an archaeology set. Why isn't it tied to archaeology? Because we're getting to the point where archaeology could use a revamp a little bit. It's not horrible, but it could use a bit of a revamp.
Like we said that last episode, archaeology could go right next to the collections tab. And if it did, I think more people would use it. I think people don't know it's there or don't know the cool things like the toys. I mean, there are things I got to go back in for archaeology because there's cool stuff I can get there. I mean, I love doing.
I haven't touched archaeology all expansion. I might do now. I've leveled my priest up to 120 last week, so you know I've got something I might go and start doing some archaeology because that's where it's all sitting. Because they used to be the main all the way up until the beginning of this expansion. So that's I've got all the professions you have to do. Woohoo! The good thing is that the Recruit a Friend now is very similar to what Final Fantasy XIV is. So you now can recruit a friend from outside of the game, and basically they'll be tied to the account, and there are rewards based on how long that friend stays subscribed to the game. And it doesn't matter if they take a month off, if they come back and resubscribe, then it adds on back onto the stuff they do. Now rewards go from all the transmog system to pets to mounts and also to game time for yourself. It mirrors Final Fantasy pretty much as that's exactly what the Final Fantasy one does. There's a recruit a friend thing, and then there is a subscription bonus for how long that player stays. They get feathers, and they can use those feathers to redeem in-game for everything else. Now, the big difference between the Final Fantasy subscription system and the WoW subscription system is that there's actually benefits for the player for actually being subscribed so long. So if you subscribe long on Final Fantasy, you actually get specific transmogs. Like the first one you get is you get Advent Children Cloud, then you get Final Fantasy VIII School, and you get Final Fantasy IX Zidane. So you can use those as like their in-game transmog system as well, which is really cool. Now, I think it would be cool if we got small transmogs that made us look like Kael'thas, you know, or you know, the players could get the Kultira stuff that makes us look like Jaina, or you know, there was stuff that made you look like Arthas pre-corruption and post-corruption. You know, there's a lot of stuff there that could be. Even Varian's armor would be pretty cool.
Well, and I was thinking, if you're getting game time for every additional 3 months after the 12 months, give you the option. Hey, if you want, you can either get game time or we can give you a cash option because it's the same amount of money.
No, a cash option is the reason you will never get a cash option in something like that is because of legal laws around the world.
No, a cash shop. So you get one of these mounts, but no, game time's 30 and the mount's like 25. Yeah. I was trying to think of like give you the ability to get to the cash shop because you're bringing Blizzard money.
I get that. And as I said, like the reason they won't give you a credit amount is because there are legal laws around the world that they'd have to contend with.
Got it. Yeah, I can see that. I do like that it's a link because I used a lot of the refer a friend, and I got all of the mounts and pets that they could get from the old one, and that was a pain because you would have one person click on this. Okay, you buy a coffee, or you got to click the. I mean, it was so convoluted. I like now you give people a link and they click it. I mean, it's and that it's not the you have to then have 2 months on because that was it was not fun.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, each game, if you put Final Fantasy and WoW next to each other, each game does something better in a certain way. Like Warcraft's transmog system is better and more robust than Final Fantasy ones, but the Final Fantasy subscription stuff is better than Warcraft's in a certain point of way. You know, they both cost the same, but there's additional rewards if you subscribe for X amount of months on Final Fantasy. The Recruit a Friend stuff is pretty much about the same, except like they've both got options once you get so far to what's the word I'm looking for? Words. I'm literally lost for words on this one. They're both in a position where after a year that they can add stuff down the line for to improve. Yeah, incentivize. Incentivize is a better word. That's the one I was looking for.
Yeah.
You can incentivize something for down the line for further Recruit a Friend after that first year, because the biggest problem is that the way that the Blizzard's model is built around these days is that a player can literally just set up a new game thing, buy a year's worth of subscription, and be done with it.
Yeah.
You know? And then they have all those rewards straight away. It's odd. It's weird. It's interesting how it can work. So we'll see what comes of it. As I said, there is definitely stuff that can be good from the new Recruit a Friend system, but there's also the bad stuff where it incentivizes more straight up down payments for it. So it's weird. But that's all about the Recruit a Friend. It's interesting. A lot of people dislike the fact that it's archaeology based or looking without being archaeology. Again, this goes back to my point, like that sort of set Mount Pet thing could have been better if they did it as a tie-in with the latest Hearthstone expansion.
Yeah, and I think the plus of this one is you can have it's not relying on many friends. It's also not relying on one friend. It's I do like that that if you get people in and they come through you can get the rewards, and then if they keep staying, you are going to get game time. I mean, they are going to. I think it's by when they laid off a bunch of their community managers. I think this is one way that they're going to get people to do grassroots marketing, get people coming into the game, and the part that might be interesting will be the classic side, because classic won't get the transmog and all that.
No,
but they will get the game time.
Yes.
So,
but you gotta remember that one sub affects both sides of the game.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
I have seen people post on Reddit that they played classic originally. I mean, this is going to go on to a point that I made weeks ago, like months ago. You know, people have come back into classic when they played it 15 years ago. They've come back and they haven't got as much time as they have before, but they've taken the opportunity to look at what BFA has to offer, and it fits in with more of the casual lifestyle that they have and how they can use it in the game. Now, obviously, there is the other side of that coin where, you know, you got people calling him out for being more casual than he was 15 years ago and playing the game still. But people grow up, they change and everything else. It's a little bit different. But there are people that have gone and praised Blizzard's BFA build. And these are people that stopped playing at the end of Wrath, you know, at the beginning of Cataclysm. Because they jumped in, even as Jin said, people jumped in for the Arthur story, you know, way back when. And that was the thing that got those people in and got them wanting to play. And then left because they didn't know who Deathwing was, because they jumped in on Warcraft 3, that was their thing. They know what the Pandaren are, but they thought it was a big joke and everything else. And then the game since Cataclysm has been about its own ingrown villains and heroes since, like, through the written media, the actual in-game story and everything else, rather than everything that predated World of Warcraft. That's interesting. I mean, it's I mean, with the exception of Sylvanas, obviously, but outside of Sylvanas, everybody else that you look today at a main character that's in World of Warcraft is new, post-Cataclysm.
Yeah. I mean, it only makes sense because there's only so much you can mine from Warcraft 3 that people haven't done yet. And
oh, absolutely.
You want exciting. You want new. I mean, part of what we liked was like Jaina, arcane ship. Wow! I mean, things that we never would have thought in Warcraft 3.
No, you're not wrong. It will be interesting to see. I mean, this is why we mentioned Warcraft 4 a long time ago. Like, is it possible that they could turn around and do a Warcraft 4? The problem with doing a Warcraft 4 in today's day and age is that it would sit in a pocket universe, and if they ever do another Cataclysm where it changes the world, that Warcraft 4 would then sit into that pocket time. But then we say that with Warcraft 3 Remastered coming around the corner, and that's going to sit in a pre-Cataclysm world. Hell, that sits in a pre-Warcraft world before the maps were finalized.
I see why Final Fantasy has all these standalone universes that kind of work, but kind of different. I mean, because otherwise it would be so weird to have to keep all these things straight.
Oh, no, absolutely. I completely agree. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We've got to remember that Warcraft 3, when it comes out, is going to have the story slightly updated and changed for the way that their characters behave in the game since then. So a lot of people are unaware of that and are expecting just a Warcraft 3 experience with specific things. But I don't know. I think if they did a Warcraft 4, it would be... I don't think it'd be aimed... I mean, Ali's saying in chat that it would be aimed at mobile and Switch. I think it will still be a PC title, but it would have a UI that was built for mobile.
Yes. And I mean, that's frankly where I was surprised that Warfronts, when they showed the initial idea for Warfronts, I could have seen Warfronts as you have your people on the PC, and you have some players that are on mobile doing stuff, and maybe that was an idea they had.
Even if you look at Warcraft 1's UI, that UI would work on mobile.
Yeah. And Classic would run on mobile.
Are you referring to the fact that somebody actually was playing WoW Classic on a mobile phone?
Yes, and like that was through the cloud, but it can run on a modern phone, and especially those iPhone 11s that I don't need any new phones. I'm not upgrading, but those things look amazing. But yeah, you could run it on pretty modern technology. I mean, and we're getting Overwatch on Switch, so
we are.
And Overwatch, I think, is more demanding than Classic.
Literally just before another Overwatch announcement. It's exactly what they did with Diablo last year. Stuck it on the Switch, and then we got Diablo Immortal as the announcement.
Yes,
so, and it's good. No, don't get me wrong. I like the fact that Overwatch is on all consoles available to them. My problem with the Switch is that the idea is that you're meant to take it on the go, and playing on the internet on the Switch is not exactly the best anyway, especially while you're on the go. But we'll see how it goes. We talked a little bit of how the story's changed through the ages. I do want to end, and I do want the chat to get involved as well. But what was your favourite expansion? You've been there since the beginning of Vanilla WoW, World of Warcraft Classic, whatever you want to call it. You've grown up through the Burning Crusade. You've grown up through Arthas. You've seen Deathwing. You've seen Pandaria. We've gone to Draenor, and we've come back and fought the Burning Legion again, and now we're fighting the Horde. What has been your favourite expansion to date?
I wasn't playing a lot of it when it was current, but Mists of Pandaria. I love how different it is. I love how they tried a lot. I love the inner turmoil message of the expansion. for that one, there's a lot of cool stuff in Mist that I wish I'd been here for, and actually when I left Kata, Mist was on the horizon. I don't know why life was got in the way. I did not make time for WoW at that time, but yeah, I'd say just I want to see more stuff like Mist. I want to see things that they experiment with. I want to see like little pockets. I mean, one of the reasons I love the Halfway Report is it's not your typical Alliance or Horde city. It's this little pocket of society, and what happens to that pocket. And I'm thinking of around Azeroth, there have to be a bunch of pockets like this, or even other planets that we have not visited and that have not visited but been visited by anybody from Azeroth. I want new things. I mean, Kultiran and Zandalar were kind of there, but people had come in and out from those, so it didn't feel quite the same way that Pandaria did.
I think the closest to the Half Hill Farm, it was Shatrath. Because of Lower City and how that felt, and that felt like a market and everything else, and you had a lot of people crafting down there, and a lot of people held. I think that's the closest other time since, before Pandaria and the Half Hill.
And Ellie's saying they loved Wrath, with Legion being a close second.
That's fair enough. I mean,
and Capos says the Burn Crusade for rating and Mott for story, he had low expectations going into Mist, and the tale that they will have just totally sucked them in.
So, the way I felt was I was pretty in with Wrath. I took a short break when they released TOTC, but I came back, really enjoyed ICC, and because I'm a big Dragon nerd, I was really looking forward to Cataclysm and Deathwing, because that was the big selling point. So I stayed all the way through, got really into the Twilight storyline and how they wove that. And then I looked forward to Mists. Like, this is how Blizzard gets me. They get me hype on these pre-release trailers for Warcraft and the story. But, I enjoyed Pandaria, and we all enjoyed Warlords for the fact that it was taking us back to Draenor, an alternate version. And then everybody liked Legion because it was the return of the Burning Legion. I think BFA is the first time I think anybody really felt apathetic going into the expansion.
I was excited for BFA. I mean, I'm still excited for BFA. But it did feel like it halted. I mean, I'm enjoying. I still play current. But yeah, there is something about BFA that is a little different. I like the hubs in BFA. I think the disjointed nature of BFA is weird. It
goes back to that point we've talked about a couple of times of how the story is very disjointed between the two factions. I think that will change in the next expansion. I think Blizzard know where they slipped up. So with everything that we've seen from leaks and everything else, I think there'll be a big change with how they tell the story going forward.
And they caught me in the beginning with I loved the opening of the tree in Lordaeron taking two cities. I mean, that was cool. I was hoping for a little bit more.
Don't get me wrong. I completely agree. The set pieces through the expansion, like the big set pieces, like the Fall of Lordaeron, the Fall of Teldrassil, sorry. Those set pieces were good. I remember when I was leveling my Horde, and I took it through the Battle of the Battle for Lordaeron, and because as a Horde thing, you walk out through that gate and you see that massive battlefield. I remember that being really, really good, and that really got a big wow factor from me. There's not a lot of other times I could walk out somewhere and get a massive wow factor,
Yeah, I'd say my other one was I do like how especially on Kultiris, the zones seem more connected. I mean, not story-wise, but just the zones design itself. Going from Tirisgard Sound to Stormsong, I saw the mountains connecting, and they feel distinct. Whereas Legion felt cemented, and segmented. You would go here. I didn't feel like I was.
I think the closest time you ever feel like that is on flight paths, but the flight paths are specifically there to take you on a scenic route.
Yeah.
if you ever do the flight point to, I believe it's the top end of High Mountain, like the opposite side of the map from Dalaran, where you fly through Suramar and you go past the mountains. That little trip, even to Stormheim, I think it works quite well as well because it's on the other side of the mountain. That trip there is pretty good. Capo in the chat said BFA ultimately falls flat because of how long they took to get it right. If you say that, you could say that about any expansion that Blizzard have launched. Wrath fell flat because the content was done too quickly. Pandaria fell flat because it took them forever to get the daily quest right that they implemented in Wrath and Cataclysm. Cataclysm died on its arse because of the difficulty, and it took the difficulty of the dungeons for them to bring round to getting it right as well. Warlords fell flat because it took them forever to get the garrisons correct and the phasing system for the garrisons. Legion fell on its arse because the artifact power system wasn't correctly corroborated. Words. That's not even a right word. I just made up one on the spot. The artifact power system was jank. The legendary system was garbage until the end when we were actually able to buy the artifacts that we were missing. And BFA has fallen flat because of that. If you look at any past expansion as a whole, you'll get those memories of good expansions. You'll get those feelings of good stories and good times that you've held. Because you're going through BFA on a day-to-day, you know, there are those problems that we see day-to-day. We look fondly back on Legion because we enjoyed the trip with our artifacts, but we forget that the legendaries are crap until the end of the expansion. We look back on Legion because Argus was really good to end on. Yeah? Go back to Mist. The first thing that everybody crapped on because of Mist is how they did the daily quest system and how they screwed it up. Because there were too many to do.
For Mist, so all I see was the amazing story in Mist. I don't see the weaknesses.
Exactly. But it's one of those things. You can't... it's hard to say you can't judge an expansion as it's going on. You can, because that's the only way that Blizzard improves is by being told that their expansion is garbage in specific points of view.
Yeah.
But when you look back at everything that's previously happened, we judge it on the expansion as a whole, rather than as it goes on, you know?
Well, and Warlords falls flat because they had to totally redesign a ton of mechanics because of where the game is going for Legion. I mean, and that's where...
No, Warlords fell flat because they changed the story direction. We got told... This is the problem with telling someone where a story is going to go. By telling us what's on the last page before we've read the beginning and the middle, it completely ruins expectations. So when somebody at BlizzCon asked Ian Hazakostas what's the final boss of Warlords going to be, and we were told Grom Hellscream, and we get to the end of Legion and the story pivots into where Gul'dan and the Legion take a step, and they've pivoted that whole story where it's not Grom Hellscream, it's in fact Gul'dan and the Legion, you know, it differs. But if you look at Warlords, the best thing Warlords did is it really improved on the raiding scene. The raids in Warlords are some of the best that we've had for the longest time. The story in each of those zones is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and Warlords brought us what we saw in Legion and BFA.
Absolutely.
Of the questing. Like, I love the questing layout. Like, I like that you clear zones. I like the treasures. I mean, things that they started in Mist, took it into Warlords. It's fun completing each zone and moving on.
No, I'd absolutely agree. But it's... Capo's saying that no other expansion pack burned him out as fast as BFA. So when he says the expansion fell flat, that's what he's speaking at for him. I can see that. I felt burnout at the end of the first raid. Oh my god. Gahoon. I'm just going to say Gahoon. So I completely skipped Dazara Lore, and I did it when I returned, just like about a month before 8.2, and I cleared it all that way. And I did it on my own and everything else. I get that. I think the problem is that Blizzard is at the moment trying to find... Thank you very much, Ali, all dear. Blizzard is trying to find an endgame system that will keep us going throughout all of the expansion. Now, the problem is that after Legion, and we saw how we threw the artifacts away, essentially, at the end of Legion, we know we're going to do that with the Heart of Azeroth, and we know that's not going to carry us through into the next story. So people aren't attached to the Heart, and they're not bothered, because they know it's just going in the bin at the end of the expansion.
Yeah.
So, what Blizzard need to do, if they want to keep us busy, is they need to go back and... I'm going to go back and I'm going to say about the system that I keep harping on about, changing the achievement system to work account-wide and give account-wide unlocks, across the board. Other MMOs have achievements. They do that. Other MMOs, WoW, they give rewards for achievements in the game. They do that. Nothing really works on an account-wide basis to improve your entire account. And I think Blizzard would be better off if they gave us more account-based rewards for the stuff that we aim to do on our main characters. Keep the end game to what it has been pre-Legion. Get your gear, do those stories, release the content to keep us going, and everything else. But those achievements, make those achievements so they're actually worthwhile in the game for other characters. If we give us the ability to have a flight whistle on our ults, if we've got lore master and adventurer, like everything explored and everything done in those zones, allow us to use a flight whistle in those things and allow our ults to be better. Because I guarantee you, if you improve the leveling experience in those certain ways, extra rep gains and everything else, people will probably be more inclined to level through your game and do that content. The world scales. People aren't going to get punished if they can't finish a zone story now.
Yeah.
There are multiple ways in the game that you can affect an account to level through anything because of everything that we've had to do. There's coming up to 9 expansions worth of content over 16 years is what it's going to be, by the time it comes out next year.
Wow. And I guess that's... that explains one reason why Classic feels less pressure for me, because I don't have to worry about... I mean, when I think of current WoW, I think of all the things I still have yet to do.
No, absolutely.
Of old content.
But, I mean, everybody's asking for a level squish. What they failed to realise is that if Blizzard gives us a level squish, the experience to get to those levels is still going to remain the same. From getting to 1 to 120 and 1 to 160, that experience is still going to remain the same that we're going to need to get between those two areas. It's just like the numbers different, and therefore people think that it's going to be there. I spent 2 hours on Classic WoW last week, and I got 2 levels between level 10 and level 12.
Yeah.
That does not feel rewarding for my time that I spend, my limited time that I have available to spend doing it. And that's why I don't do a lot of Classic WoW, because it's not rewarding my time. Whereas if I wanted to go and level a gnome so I get the gnome heritage armor, I know that 2 hours spent I could do... What, an average of, if you say an average of a dungeon is about 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, I could do 4 to 5 dungeons an hour if you include the queue. And in those 4 to 5 dungeons, I could get 4 to 5 levels.
Yes.
I feel rewarded for my time that I spend. Now, I'm not saying that's anything against anybody that enjoys Classic WoW in the way it does it. But I'm saying that if you're expecting a level squish is going to help how the leveling is, because it's got a lower end game number, the experience that you're going to need per level is probably going to be higher, to the point where it's still going to take you just as long as it does now to get to whatever the level cap is.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, it's in our minds we think it's less, but it's really not that much less.
Just because the end game number is less, it's less intimidating to people. Turning around to a newer player and saying, I'd love to help you, but you've got to get to 120 first, and then you can come and play with me. You know, and that's why they're doing this whole party sync thing before you bring it up, because I know that's where your brain's going to go.
Oh, yes.
Party sync will be a thing. I won't use it.
I'm going to use it because there are times that Michael's getting ahead of me because of all of all of that weed. I mean, those herbs that he's
Jesus.
Oh, did I tell you that I met a high mage in Classic?
No.
Yes, we were in. Are you familiar with Murder Cave in Westfall?
Murder Cave.
It is a cave, and I saw this before my eyes. Mobs respawn in less than a minute.
Oh,
I mean, like,
is it the cave full of gnolls and
Defias?
Yeah, the one that's bang smack in the middle of the map.
Yes,
not the one on the beach. Yeah,
correct. Yes.
Chat is not appreciative of you telling this story. It seems.
We'll move on. We'll move on.
I think we're getting pretty much to the end of the episode anyway. We've already been going for about an hour and a bit. Yeah, I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant how a level squish will be handled. I'm hoping, like, they'll probably, if they are going to announce the level squish, it'll be at BlizzCon with expansion news. As long as somebody asks what the experience level is going to be like. If they turn around and say that the number's reducing, but the experience will remain the same, like the time to get from 1 to 60 will be the same as 1 to 120, they fully expect you to just rinse it through dungeons. And that'll be the time frame. Like, that's exactly what they'll be aiming for. So it'll be interesting to see. We've got another month and a half before BlizzCon is upon us. So we will see how it comes. But I think that is going to be the end of this episode of Stories Around Azeroth. So, Mr. Frazley, where can they find you around the internet, my dear sir?
You can find me at Frazley.com or on Twitter at Frazleytastic.
And you can find me on my main account at Titans Creed. You can find my gaming specific one, which is literally less of my daily babble, at Gaming Phoenix. You can find videos such as the vidcast of this podcast at youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions, or you could find this podcast live every Sunday at varying times, it seems, because life is just changing every day. Or you can find me streaming at other times 5 to 7 days a week at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions. Thank you very much for watching and or listening this week, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to my main gnome, Frazley. I hope he's had as much fun talking as I have.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you very much for watching or listening, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of Stories Around Azeroth. And as Mr. Frazley likes to say,
until next time, be awesome.
Indeed, be awesome. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Safe travels, and we'll see you next time.